Zion Armstrong, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Very excited to have you in the Export Beer Garden studio this morning. You would have tucked into a few exports growing up in West Auckland?
No, I always drunk water, mate.
Water. Yeah, we've had a few very successful West Aucklanders who have gone on to great global success. And we always test them with a bit of export chat at the beginning, but with differing levels of enthusiasm. Look, we've got a cracker of an ep lined up, but we actually had a little bit of a chat with you in the coffee shop before we came in, and realised that you've linked up with a guest who we had about 3 weeks ago, Tim Brown. You guys still in contact from the glory days?
Did Tim braid my name?
He didn't.
He didn't. All right, chopped liver, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously not. No, I was lucky enough to meet Tim when I was living in the States through the Kia network. And they asked, would you spend some time and see what they're doing, having a chat, because obviously we're both in a similar industry. And he came up to Portland and we had lunch, and then I invited him to our headquarters, and fast forward to about a year later, we launched the world's most sustainable shoe.
Yeah, I remember when I saw that collab come up and I thought, how the hell have Allbirds jumped in with Adidas without knowing that there was a Kiwi at the head? And it's just that old thing of 2 degrees of separation while you're in the States. Hey, I know a Kiwi. Yeah, I know another Kiwi. You guys must know each other. Was there any trepidation on the Addy side for you giving Tim the keys to the candy store and having a look at a global superpower's back room? Yeah,
so when we're at the North American headquarters, which at that time was global co-headquarters, so we had what we call the innovation team based there. So when you get behind those curtains, there's a lot of secret sauce happening. Obviously, we'd remove the product, but I wanted to show him the technology and capabilities that we had. I'd never met Tim before. Obviously, I knew who he was through his soccer roots. But just as soon as I met him, within 30 seconds, like, he's a good Kiwi bugger.
Yeah.
So he'd come on up and see what we do, and he was just really appreciative. And from that moment, I actually wrote to our board in Germany. I said, I think there's something really special here, A, with him as a human, and B, with what Allbirds are doing and what we were doing around ocean plastic. So I introduced him to our global head of brands, and he was like, I'm too busy. I said, just trust me, meet the guy, take it from there. And a few months later, I get the text saying, what an awesome guy. We're going to figure this out and do a collab, and the rest is history.
So cool.
Yeah, special guy is a good way of putting it. The humbleness that came across despite what he's done in his life, it just pours through. Moving on, we've got a cracker of an ep lined up, and I feel like we struck a little bit of gold in our prep. So we listened to a podcast you did last year when you were talking about your time as president of Adidas in North America. And you mentioned that you couldn't have done it without the help of 3 strong wahine. And so we actually reached out to them on social media, on Instagram, and one of them came back to us, and she came back to us with a lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of heat.
Yeah, that was so good. So her name is Kimmy Howington. She started as your assistant and became your chief of staff by the end. And she told us your love language was getting roasted. Is there any truth to that?
Well, first off, that's only a 33% strike rate. So what happened to the other 2?
Yeah.
They had private Instagram profiles. So one of them has only accepted us this morning, and we didn't get a chance.
Yeah. It's actually pretty good that only one of them came through.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I feel like we got all we needed. Yeah, but we actually wanted to start with a story she's given us, and we're going to plant you right in the heart of it. So can you tell us about your very first all-employee meeting as the president of Adidas North America?
Just got to do with a certain state.
I believe so.
She gave us some breadcrumbs and said, let him take it off.
So it was actually a sales meeting. I think we're in Palm Springs, and the prior president was sitting beside me, a wonderful man, but also a bit of a joker. And we're about to set up a speed factory in Arkansas.
I think that's illegal in New Zealand, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it's just, I can't talk about those things. A footwear speed factory or whatever it was. I can't remember what it was. And anyway, I lean across to Mark and it's Kansas, right? And he goes, yeah, buddy. So I get up, and it's a large conference, and we had 12,500 employees, and I get up there and I'm doing my thing, and I'm saying, this is the investment we're doing here, and here, and we're about to open up in Little Rock, Kansas. The place just goes silent, right? And I'm like, okay, just keep rolling with it, just carried on. And then later that night, a colleague came up and said, "You were hilarious. I'm going to win so much money on this." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Kansas." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Oh my God. You know it's Arkansas, right?" I said, "Yes, I do." So here I am. Here's your new president. And well played.
When the breadcrumbs for that story were laid out, I could swear it was going to be a Virginia or a West Virginia faux pas. So Arkansas, I'm glad that it wasn't too much of a
Yeah, so I just say it like it's normal now. And I'm sure there's an Arkansas somewhere in America. But yeah, I got that was the start of the first blooper on stage.
Secondary question she suggested we ask you was about your moonwalking ability.
Well, I think we're going to have to agree to disagree here, because there was quite a few moments where I was, stress is starting to reach a certain level, so I'd get out and I'd just moonwalk down the executive hallway. Mm-hmm. And the girls seemed to think that their moonwalk was better than mine, but I still dispute that.
Do you have a moonwalk off?
I actually they closed the blinds and shut me in. Let's just say I wasn't on the podium, but I thought I was doing all right.
Yeah. Is it a move that you've had in your locker for a while, the moonwalk?
No, but the girls were showing off, so I thought I'd watch this and
That's a little insight, I'm sure we'll touch on it later, but into the environment that you created while you're in North America, which maybe broke the stereotype or the mold for a lot of people there. So really looking forward to seeing how you got to the stage of moonwalking down North America HQ Adidas.
Yeah, we're going to bring Kimmy back in a little bit later.
We don't have to, mate.
But I wanted to trace the story from the start, which takes us to West Auckland, as we mentioned. And we got sort of mixed info about your siblings and your upbringing. Are you one of 10?
Yeah, I've got 6 sisters and 3 brothers.
So it is. We were right. Because Kimmy said 1 million. I was like, we're a few short here, but it is. Well,
that's the other brothers and sisters, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's complex. Mum was married a few times, and Dad was married a few times, and I was a mistake in between.
Right. And where do you fit in that structure of youngest to oldest?
3rd youngest.
Right. Okay. Baby of the bunch. One of the babies of the bunch.
Baby of the bunch and the dumbest of the bunch here.
Well, I think your career would. I think your career would. Maybe your school record different, but I think your career says something different.
So help paint a picture for your upbringing. West Auckland, was it kind of gang territory? Was it sort of humble beginnings? Or?
Yeah, no, I was out there recently. I did a speech at Massey High, and I drove around the community, and I don't know if it was like that when I was there, but driving back there, and I was like, it's quite a diverse situation, if I just leave it at that. But yeah, I was actually born in Otara, and then Mum at that stage I was number 4, I think, on her side, and decided to move us to Massey. So yeah, raised up in Massey, and I had 3 stepfathers, and then, I'll make sure I get this right, or 1 I didn't know, and then 2 stepfathers, and then my father as well. So yeah, quite a complex situation when you've got a bit of a rotation scheme going on.
Were you close to the siblings? Were you guys a close family unit?
Yeah, on Mum's side, because we lived together, absolutely. I didn't really get to know my father's side until later. It was sort of around the 12, 13, 14-year age where I got to meet Dad's side. And so all of a sudden I walk in, and Dad was born in Fiji. His mum was Samoan African-American. And then they came to New Zealand when Dad was around 16. And so I hadn't really got to know that side of the family. And all of a sudden you walk in and you've got Maoris and Samoans and coming up, running up and hugging you and kissing you. And I was brought up on the Pākehā side, so I'm like this. So it was quite an adjustment at that stage of my life, but the best adjustment I could ever ask for, because then all of a sudden you've got 2 whānau coming into one, and then growing up in Massey, it's one of the best melting cultural hotspots, I think, in New Zealand.
There's a pivotal moment in your story, which I know you've told, and I'm going to get you to tell the story if it's okay. But leading up to that moment at age 14 with the motorbike, can you paint a picture? Like, what were you like at school? What was Zion? Were you academic? Were you smart? Were you top of the class?
So if we fast forward to high school, I think I might have been in one of the top classes in 3rd form. I very quickly got demoted to one of the lower end classes in 4th form. I didn't enjoy it. I mean, I loved sport, and that was really 14, 15 as I started growing, because I was a bit of a pipsqueak at 13. But was never, ever my cup of tea. And I think if you ask my teachers, quite a few of them quite actually wrote in the reports, yeah, lack of attention, too much joking around, and won't come to anything.
And
Yeah.
it's
especially the maths teachers where I said trigonometry is bullshit.
they don't like that.
I still can't figure it out.
They don't like that. I feel really privileged when we get guests like you that have come from this, like disrupted upbringing, and you're not the top of the class and there's trouble, and to see where you've got to and sort of painting the picture. And like I said, there was one moment which I've heard you talk about as being quite pivotal. Can you take us to the story of what happened with the motorbike at 14?
Yeah, so it was a very, very powerful motorbike. Might have been a nifty 50, but let's just embellish the story for our guests, right? It's not something that I'm proud of, but I'm something that I'm very thankful for, if that makes sense. Because if it didn't happen and I didn't get caught, I think my life would have taken a very, very different path. So borrowed a motorbike that wasn't mine. I was out there joyriding one night, and then the sirens were behind me. Not very smart, not wearing a helmet, right, on a stolen 50-50. So as they pulled up beside me, I decided to beat the feet and jump the fence and started running away from them. They were chasing me and they couldn't catch me, and the Top Gun movie where the big comes in and Tom Cruise does that and sort of signals to them. I might have been using the old hand signals as well. And managed to give them the slip and hid under a house. I probably would have sprinted a good K, so I was a little bit buggered. And then I gave it a little while and poked my head out, and I just saw these German shepherds on these long leads everywhere. And I was like, okay, this is not ideal. And then I just turned around and there's one jumping at me. So I can't remember, there might have been 2 or 3 attacking me at the time. And of course, when you're 14, it's fight or flight, and I fought them. Dumbest move ever, because out came the battens as well. And it's dark, they couldn't tell I was a young 14-year-old. Got very, very lucky actually. The bites were a millimetre this way or that way. Could have lost tendons and never had a running career. So got arrested that night, and then long story short, a couple of weeks ago, a undercover police car turned up in the driveway, and I actually saw it pull in, and I was like, oh. And a giant of a man popped out and full on superintendent type uniform and knocked on the door, and Mum just looked at me. I was like, out of all looking like, why me? And he said, is your son Zion? Yep. I'm Ross Dallow. I'm the chief of police, but I'm also a local track and field coach. We think your son's got some talent because he managed to run away from some pretty fast guys. So bundled me in the car, and that was the start of a very special relationship he became my second father, and became a coach for me, and more a father for me, and got me off the streets and into running.
Oh, I did want to ask about that, like the absence of your paternal father on the scene. So he did fulfill that role?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and this is no disrespect to my dad. It just is what it is, right? And I have a very close relationship with my dad now, and he's bunking down in my apartment and moved in. But at that stage, it was kind of good to have someone outside of the family as well, just because of the size of the guy, and also he was fun, but he was also strict. And I didn't realise at the time, but every weekend he made me go and help him in his garden. He had all these palm trees, etc. I realise now, again, he was just keeping me off the streets. So I was getting some pocket money in there, and his lovely wife Denise would feed me, and which was just heaven, like, because it was always a beautiful spread, which I wasn't used to. And then every single night he'd be there for training. So it was just awesome. And then all of a sudden I had someone there, a constant in my life. At the start, obviously, there wasn't that sort of love. But over time, just absolutely adore the man. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, because the fairy tale version of it is you meet this guy and your life changes instantly. But was there a pull and a push about the attractions of, like, we've all been teenagers, like the attractions of being a teenager and going out and smashing a letterbox or going for a joyride? Was that still a part in your life? And there was this authority figure there that was like, it's probably not the best thing to do, because if Big Ross finds out, I'm in the shit here.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of meeting the squad that he had as well. Walking in there and seeing, his son was a national decathlete champion, and there was other Olympians and Commonwealth Games athletes in that group. That all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. And at the time you had Michael Jones and Ronnie Clark and Apollo Pirelli and the guys coming to Waimata Track Club to learn how to run. So all of a sudden you're in this group. So I think that was super important. I was still, doing things that any teenage was doing on a Friday night and etc. I guess it wasn't until I started winning national titles and breaking records that I realised, okay, it's time to really, buckle up and follow this. So I still always had a good balance, because I'm sure there's going to be some stories that come out here. But he always knew that I was going to be me, have fun, but I'd always turn up to training.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll volunteer this story.
Yeah, good.
Might have had a large night, might have been on the export golds a little bit too much. But,
Here we go.
yeah, but I've always,
Tick.
my rule is turn up, right? So I turned up and he could smell it on me. I was out at Mount Smart Stadium and the training was supposed to be something else. And he goes, right, it's 6 300-metre reps today, which is full speed, 100-metre walk and away you go again. It's pretty brutal when you're not hungover. So I've done 2 or 3 of them and I'm just vomiting on the track and he's laughing and we're just having a chat. And one of the other coaches, who's a great guy, came across and starts having a go at Ross. And Ross, you don't have a go with. And he starts giving it back to him and said, you just go and coach your athletes. And Ross kicked me in the guts.
So a bit of tough love in there.
Oh, but he knew it wasn't from the overtraining. And so we're just having a good laugh. And he's like, tell him to. Yeah, so I was cracking up in between vomits. And he was like, get back up and go again and go again and go again. So he knew I was going to be me. And that's why I always appreciate. But obviously on the big days, it was buckle up. And
Because I've heard you say one more for the championship was a catch cry of Ross's?
one more for the competition.
For the competition.
Yeah, one more for the competition. So every time we'd finish and most people would go, he'd look at me and go, one more for the competition. So I'd do that one more rep. And I think that was always a really important thing, just mentally. I knew I'd done that extra bit.
And where did that drive come from at such a young age to not, because it's easy as a teenager to sack it off and pack it in and go, I can't. But you resisted that urge.
Yeah, especially, hurdles isn't exactly the funnest race in the world. Especially the 400 hurdles, it's absolutely brutal. I guess for me it was a path, and it was something that, okay, there's consistency in my life. There's the support there's great people around us, and just setting those goals and each year getting that a little bit better. And we'd sit there at the start of every winter season and say, okay, here's what we're going to plan. And I fast forward to, 20 years later in my professional career, every quarter I'd also plan, what am I going to do? How do I get there? How do you celebrate these things? So we just set those small goals. And he said, one day you'll be breaking 50 seconds. I was like, no way. No one's ever done that in New Zealand. But every year we just tick them off. And so it was a good way of also learning small steps to get to the end goal. So I think as you saw that progression, the bug just got better and better and better and better. But I also knew deep down inside, whilst I was New Zealand champion record holder, I also knew I wasn't good enough to be the best in the world. Probably a bad thing to say out loud, but it just was my mentality at the time. So I knew I had to start working at the same time. So I always worked and trained. So I'd train in the morning, go to work, train at night.
Just on Ross, and I've heard him, forgive me if I mangle the quote, but it's like for all of the troubled youths I came across, Zion was the most special.
Zion stood out the most.
Stood out the most.
Not sure how to take that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, how do you?
What do you think he saw in you? Because the strength of relationship, is it hard for you to put words in his mouth?
I think he just saw what I'd gone through. I was living in a caravan because there wasn't enough room in the house, and we're on a hill like that, and the caravan was like that, so sleepy like this. I wasn't the most talented. I recall when I had a very, very bad hamstring tear in a game of rugby. He said, I don't think you'll ever run again. It was that bad. I ripped right off the back of the gluteus maximus, just snapped right off, but came back to it. And so I just think he just saw the grit and determination and that I was willing to do what it took to get there. I think I've shared this as well. I used to run in a bark trail to get off the track and was surrounded by trees, and it was a wet, cold, horrible day, and it's a horrible track that was a really hard session. And I saw him in the trees hiding. It was pouring down, and he didn't say anything, and I didn't acknowledge that I saw him. But for me, I look back now, it's like he was checking up on me. Is he doing what he said he's going to do? I was doing it. So I think if you put the mahi in, he was always going to be there.
Yeah.
Those are incredible lessons to learn as a young male that there's someone that's fronting up and that has that care for you. That must have been pretty uplifting.
Yeah, it was for me. It was the pivotal moment in my life. Just to have that right there, and as I was probably in the darkest potential space of my life, to have that person there, and to see him in that police uniform, just gave you that sort of sense of pride. But he was just that hardcore Kiwi man. But when you got to know him, he was this beautiful human being that was giving so much to the community. I'm one of hundreds that he coached, right? Yeah. So that was really cool.
Was he supportive of you dropping out of high school and entering the workforce at 16, 17?
Yeah. Everyone. I mean, I went to Kelston Boys in my last year, so I left Massey and went across to Kelston, which was amazing. I was just really, really impressed at the difference in terms of the focus that the students had. So I was miles behind, and I started picking up economics in 7th form. Let's just say I failed everything but PE. And Sir Graham Henry invited me back to do second year 7th, which was quite a funny session. And my mum was like, yes, he's got to come back. And he's like, he's not going to become anything. And I'm sitting there grinning away. And, Sir G's always got that little wiry look on his face. And I said, okay, I'll come back. He started smiling away. He said, but I'm not playing sport.
Yeah. Oh, really? The double bluff?
Hey? Yeah, I said, no. I said, I got you. So I went into the workforce and, never looked back. He was actually round home Waiheke. We went for a walk the other day, and I reminded him of his quote of, I'll never become something. But he said, but I was right.
He also gets the pit with you, doesn't he, when you jump into the red wines with Raywin?
Yeah, well, she was round actually last weekend. Might have had a little birthday, and she popped in, had a couple. But I bumped into her on the ferry a couple of months ago, and actually it was Women's World Cup was going on, and she said, what are you doing? I said, I'm just going back to the apartment. She goes, come round to mine, let's drink Graham's wine. So we did. So she gave him a text, he comes in, he's like, what are you doing?
I can't imagine a world in which I go and have like wines around it. Well, I don't drink anymore, but around at Susan Hassel's house, like down in the future, our old headmaster at Hamilton Boys.
It could happen.
By the way, Raywin is the legend of the two, so
100%.
Make sure that's said out there.
Yeah, we'll put that on record.
So this period of your life, the running period, is sort of 1992 starts, and you end up going to the Com Games in Kuala Lumpur in 1998. What did the 6 years of working in training look like? Are you dedicated to your craft? Are you every day out there?
Yeah, every morning I'd do either a track or a gym session. I'd then go and pack shoes. Yeah, so I started, I think it was 93, 94, unpacking 40-foot containers of shoes. And then in the evening, I'd go to the track and do a second session. I look back now and I'm like, I don't know how you did it. And then in 1994, another export gold night. You're
going to slowly drip feeding out through the episode. No. Actually, I am a big export gold guy.
I made it was called the Chelsea Sugar Development Camps, and it's back when they picked the best up-and-coming athletes that were below, sort of international standard. And so that was really cool because you got this kit. So I had my first free jumper and bits and pieces, and we're down in Christchurch, and myself and a javelin thrower who will remain. I won't throw Skippy under the bus. We snuck out and had a few beers and a couple more, and came back, and the coaches were sitting in the lobby of wherever we're staying, and I just remember said, right, tomorrow you'll be running the 400-metre hurdles instead of the 300-metre hurdles, because that's a big step up, right? I don't think I'd actually ever run a 400 hurdles at that stage. Can't remember. Anyway, I was on the outside lane, and one of the fastest guys, Grant Coots, he'll love this. His other nickname is Pipsqueak because he's got the weakest bench press in the world. He'll love that too. He passed me, I think, in the first hurdle. So the stagger's 8 metres. He already passed me. I was like, oh, my God. So I just went and tried to keep up with him. I managed to keep up with him all the way through to the home straight, and managed to beat Squeak and broke the under 20 New Zealand record, which was held by Philip Mills, I think, and qualified for the World Juniors. So again, mother's milk sometimes keeps you relaxed, and but just having someone fly past, and I was just panicked and just went with them. Didn't even realise I could run that fast, and set a national record. And so that qualified for World Juniors in Portugal, Lisbon, which was just an incredible event. proudest moment was in the 4x4. We made the final, and we finished in the worst position possible, which is fourth. So we just missed a medal, and I blame myself for that because the other three boys were faster. But we set a national junior record, and that still stands today.
I spoke to one of your mates about your athletics career, and he said like the 400 meter hurdles is just like the worst event. Like the 400 on its own is just like this hurt locker, but you're adding the hurdle element. To be successful, you need super mentality as well as the physical gifts?
Yeah, I think you need rhythm because you need to be able to hurdle both legs, which takes a lot of practice. If you get it right, it's okay. Yeah, of course it's hurt and you're full of lactic acid. It's when you make mistakes and you got to try and catch up to get back into that rhythm is when the race can become really painful. So it's not something I recommend. And actually, a friend's coaching a young athlete the other day, and I went out and she said, "Can you come and see?" And I said, "Look, I don't know how to coach." And I watched her, and she goes, "What do you think?" I said, "Pick another race." The coach was like, "Shut up, Leon." I was like, "No, seriously, it really hurts. Pick another race." But it's something that takes its toll on the body, that's for sure. Yeah, so it's a lot of running full speed to 400, jumping 10 sticks. It's not smart, especially when you're going around bends all the time on rubber.
Yeah. So 94, your World Juniors. Is that set in motion the desire to represent New Zealand at the Com Games in 98?
Yeah, sorry, that get back to answering your question. Having that experience wearing the black singlet at an international level and then just having the few weeks away with that group of people, still close friends today, that was like, okay, what's next? And the next step up was the Com Games. And that was in 98. And managed to qualify for that. And again, still, that will be the proudest moment of my sporting career ever, is walking down that tunnel in KL and just looking around. Chris Donaldson was beside me and Sean Pharrell and just some close mates, but seeing legends of New Zealand. Millie Khan was a few steps, I think, in front of us, and it was the Sarah Olmers of the world. And it was just like, oh my God, this is such a cool, I've made it, as in everything I've worked for has just come true. The race is the bonus. And again, my mentality at the time, probably not the best in terms of if I was coaching someone today, but that was a moment for me that's like, it's all worth it.
That 98 team includes New Zealand Sevens, for the first time, and one of the fascinating characters in this kind of podcast journey is Jonah Lomu, who was part of that side. Was there a sense of awe around him and being in his presence? What was he like as an athlete or in the village?
Yeah, the big fella, I actually knew the big fella because we used to race against each other. He was a very fast 100-meter hurdler as well.
Oh, wow.
And so I only just pipped him.
He's a claim to fame.
That is a claim to fame. That is a flex, if anything. Fuck the Adidas stuff. That's the claim to fame.
Well, he beat me in the heat and then I beat him in the final.
A few beers beforehand and you're flying.
Yeah, I've got a photo somewhere actually behind the blocks. It's freaking, it's just, I've hidden it because the big man is, and I'm this tiny little skinny little fellow with a mullet. But yeah, just, I spent quite a bit of time with some of the Sevens guys over there and watching Jonah have guys like Linford Christie come up to him wanting to get his signature or talk to him in photographs, etc. But also we promised a few people that we were going to go and watch them, and being in the village trying to get to a certain venue with Jonah, good luck. Because every single person was stopping wanting to take a photo with him and shake his hand, and he was just always a man of patience. Would stop for everyone, big smile, big arm around them. And I was like, fuck this, I'm going. It was incredible. And I remember one night in the swimming pools, I was there with Rushy and a couple of the other fellas, and there was a certain English female swimmer that I might have fancied, and she came up and she goes, "Please don't take this the wrong way, but you're quite skinny for a rugby player." And Rushy did miss a beat. He was awesome. He said, "You should see him though. Tackles like," and I was like, "Oh, God bless your son."
Very good.
Led to nothing. But yeah, that was another humbling moment. You think you're in shape there before you stand beside those guys.
For all the glory moments like that, though, I imagine as an aspiring athlete, it's a little bit hand to mouth. So you're working 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and having to, I guess, self-fund to try and keep that dream alive. Because I'm assuming, and I do know because I know how the story goes, Sydney 2000 is on the horizon next. So is it a desire to kind of keep going forward?
Yeah, the closing ceremony of KL, and I sat beside Chris Donaldson, and we looked at each other and said, that's next. Yeah, the Olympics is next, and we were just on such a natural high, such a cool thing at the closing ceremony. We might have jumped the fence a little bit early as well and got things going.
He said there was someone came down on a bed base wrapped in plastic that you might not remember, but is that right?
I do remember that. That was hilarious. But no, this was still in the stadium. We decided the ceremony was taking a little bit long, so we jumped the fence and got the party going. But yeah, that was the dream from there on. And yes, I never received, not that I can recall, any funding outside of my sister buying an All Blacks jersey off me to help fundraise, and Ross, I think, lent me $1,000 once. Everything else I funded myself. And I think it's one of the only times Mum said she's proud of me. She said, not once did you ever ask for support. It was a lot of money that went into it, but at that time it was what you loved doing. And then fast forward to Sydney, the IAAF, so the International Amateur Athletic Federation, has normally an A standard and a B standard. In most countries, if you run the A standard, you're up for selection. If you run the B standard, it's up to really the selectors to figure out whether they want to provide you that. And then I managed to run the A standard. I managed to break 50 seconds, which is the first time anyone in New Zealand had broken 50 seconds for 4 hurdles. So I ran 49.95, so I snuck under there. But I hadn't been selected. So I carried on to go to Europe, and I can't remember where we were racing, but it was a European Grand Prix, and I was actually running probably the race of my life. And on the last or second to last, it might have been the last hurdle, I got too close and my foot got caught underneath. When your foot gets caught underneath the hurdle, it doesn't move. Went down. I was more embarrassed because I knew Chris was recording the race, and you can actually hear him say, "Oh fuck, he's going to be pissed." And anyway, we carried on, and I wasn't feeling so flash, and I came back to New Zealand, and I wasn't running that well, and went and saw the doc. He said, "Take off your shirt," and he said, "When did you pop your shoulder?" So I'd had a subluxation of the shoulder joint, and honestly didn't hurt. And then I didn't get selected for Sydney, which still hurts to this moment today, because I had qualified, but the selectors made a standard higher than the international A standard, similar to what some of the athletes face today, which I still think is just wrong. And I'd love us to fight that, and think of the Zoe Hobbs, what she went through recently. Imagine if she'd quit, we would have had our best women's sprinter of all time on our hands today. But I didn't get that opportunity, and I went across to Sydney, and actually one of the hardest things was the Australian 400 hurdlers were warming up, and I was on the side of the track watching them yelling out, and they came up and gave me a hug and said, "You should be out here with us." Having the Australian guys say that to you, I was like, that was a moment, and sat back in the stands, and I don't think it was an export gold, but it was certainly brown liquid. Then I came back to New Zealand after that, and went to the track one day and just was gone. I just put the shoes in the bag, and that was it.
Yeah, I want to sort of cross over timelines here, because that's been a great snapshot of your athletic career. But at the same time, you've sort of been bubbling away from that factory in Onehunga. You've got out on the road, you've been doing sales, and I think it was Reebok and Puma, and you've sort of developed the gift of the gab, and you've been starting to make some pretty big headway in the footwear game. And so if I've got, at that same time, age 24, you were given the job of head of footwear at Adidas for New Zealand at that same moment when you're deciding whether or not to continue with athletics? Yeah,
so I can't remember the exact timing, but so I'd been with Adi New Zealand for probably 3 or 4 years, maybe 3 years, and then the managing director at the time promoted me to the head of footwear. So we had a head of footwear, head of apparel, and then the head of All Blacks, so basically a third of the company. And I went to the track, and I can't remember what happened first, but then I was like, okay, it's time now to pivot, and career is now going to take the lead. I'd worked previously at Converse for 5 years. I had 1 year with Sports Network, which was Jock Hobbs' company, and then I had 5 years with Adidas New Zealand. That was the day that was the end of the track.
It's a huge position of power, like 24 years old, to have such a big role. Like who trusted you with that responsibility at that age?
Yeah, that's why we pretty grade so quickly, Craig? Losses, again, I thanked him on a podcast recently. He had the trust in me. I was young and still rough around the edges. and we're a small team. But he gave me the promotion, and we actually Adidas footwear that back then was pretty average, but we had some great years, and I was working really, really hard. And he one day came in, because Friday afternoons Craig would always be at a certain location on College Hill, and then
Heaps of export golds in there, I think.
there was a few, and he said, "You know what time it is, right?" And I was like, "Shit, I've finally got the call up. I've got the call up." So off we went to the pub. But it was great. So I'm very thankful for Lawson for giving me that opportunity. And then, because I was always dropping hints, an XR6 would be nice, wouldn't it? Because I did a lot of travel. And then last day of the year, company barbecue Christmas, and he walks in and drops the old XR6 keys on the table. I was like, "You fucking beauty, let's go." There's the small things in life, huh?
But in a way, you've made your own luck, right? Because tell us the story of how you ended up at Adidas NZ.
I called him. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I was Sports Network. We were going through things. My running was requiring time offshore. Yeah, so I had to go and acclimatise for Kuala Lumpur, and they were a small family-owned business and couldn't afford their sales rep to be away. And I was like, okay. And I was talking to the Puma guys, which was great. But for me, Adi was always that brand because of certain athletes that I looked up to. And that time it was Daley Thompson. I was a decathlete as well, and I was like, that's the track and field brand that I really want to work with. So I gave Craig a call, and his gruff manner, he said, "We haven't got anything here, but come in." Went in and had a chat, and he created a job for me, which was really, really lucky. So it was, pick up the phone, kids. Don't be shy.
But second time in your formative years that someone's taken a chance on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, he'll frame it as an "I grew you," "I established you." We still catch up and have a couple of quiets every now and then, once or twice a year.
So that sort of front-footed nature of going out and just being a bit cheeky or being proactive seems to be a theme through the next years we're going to get to. So you moved to Adidas. Can I stop here? Adidas?
I was going to say we're all we're all over the place here.
Yeah.
There's going to be like 15 different pronunciations during the course of the year.
Different countries, different
Yeah,
takes.
it depends. Yeah, so in New Zealand it's Adidas, in the States it's Adidas, and then the founder, his nickname was Adi. His second name is Dazzler. Adi Does. Take his nickname and put Does together. Adi Does. So
Okay.
the official.
What are you going to
I'm
run with?
going to go with Adidas.
Just go.
After all that, you're going to
Just go with Adi.
I think I started with Adidas. I think my first one was Adidas, and I've gone all over the place since
Well, I
then.
remember presenting to the Foot Locker global president for the first time in Adidas, and he stopped me and goes, "You're in the United States now. It's Adidas, son." Like, righto. Whatever you want, you give me an order.
Are you from Arkansas?
So one of the stories I've heard is that you move over to Germany as product manager in around 2003. You walk straight into the CEO's office with no appointment and say, "G'day, I'm Zion from New Zealand. Which one of these BMWs is mine?" Is that an embellishment?
It might have been the CFO, because the CFO was actually Kiwi.
Right.
Yeah, at the time, Robin Stalker. And I pulled up, and it was like -14. It was January, and I rocked up in shorts, and I did go up and say g'day. But the board had this beautiful covered area, and they had the big flash cars up there. So I was like, "Is that mine out there, bro?" He was like, "You must be Zealand."
I had that in my notes. Was how much Kiwiness did you take with you on your journey? Like, are you broing in Adidas headquarters?
We had an intern. So I worked in the running business unit, and the majority of the team were European or American. But then myself and a great mate, Tomo, left Adidas Australia and Adidas New Zealand at the same time, and we worked in the same corridor, and it was very serious, right? And we're in Bavaria, so it was quite a quiet, reserved environment, and we're just giving it to each other. And then one day the German intern comes up and goes, "You guys really hate each other, right?" He said, "We can't believe how abusive the two of you are to each other." So I went down to Tom and said, let's fuck with these guys. So he comes storming down, like turning it up, and we're going for it, having a play fight, and they're freaking out. Like, do we need security? And we're just having a good old laugh. So yeah, we just tried to bring, I think you just got to be yourself, right? Yeah. So I've quite often been called the unpolished act, but I'm like, if you try and be someone that you're not, then people are going to see through it, and got to go home and look at yourself in the mirror and say, just be yourself.
And what did HQ actually see in NZ to pluck you out and transplant you to Bavaria?
Yeah, so Klaus Filbury, he'd left quite a few messages and emails, and I was deleting them because when I was in Adidas New Zealand, they said, look, any emails you get from people you're not familiar with, delete, because there's a virus going around.
Amazing.
I listened to his voicemail. This is here, Filbury. I am the Global Business Unit Manager of Running. Yeah,
You should do that. You do a good, you do good accents.
Here it comes to. Yeah. So anyway, I was like, shit, I've been deleting this guy's messages. And what we had been doing in New Zealand, we were actually meeting with podiatrists and doctors. My role was to show them our new products and educate them on when an athlete or anyone who comes off the street with injuries, this is the type of product we have and recommend this shoe for this person, blah, blah, blah. And then we partnered with some of the best doctors and podiatrists in the country and created Adidas Sports Medicine at St. John's.
Yeah, at Merton Road.
Yeah, so you had Doc Patterson and James Baxter, etc. And we had these foot scans, and they were looking for financial support, and we were looking for some credibility because, again, other brands were crushing us back then on the footwear scene. So then we had created actually quite a strong running business, and Adi wasn't known as a running brand at that stage. We'd lost everything. So then they called me and said, what have you guys been doing? And it wasn't just me, it was a team. And they said, will you fly up and interview for a potential role in the running business unit? Went up there and they gave me a little task to present to everyone. I finished the presentation. They said, can you do it again, but slower? I must have been nervous as a kitten. And obviously they didn't understand a single word. Fast forward, got the job, and I was coming back every year to see family and friends over Christmas. And they're like, bro, what's wrong with you? I said, you talk so.
Speed it up, man.
Yeah.
So move the sort of timeline along a little bit. You're there at Adidas headquarters for 3 or 4 years, work your ass off by all the accounts of the people we've spoken to, and then you get your first really big job, which is Regional Asia Pacific Head of Footwear, which is essentially, if my information is accurate, it's like the liaison between the corporate and the countries to work out their footwear strategy. Mm-hmm. Like a serious position of power, signing off with countries, and you're still 30. You're only 30. Did you have like imposter syndrome? Like, is that?
Yeah, it would have been 27, 28,
yeah.
I think. So how that came about, I was actually quite frustrated sitting in global meetings and the focus was so European-centric. Obviously, being Adidas, European, and we dominated, and then trying to attack America. Yeah, if you win those two markets. And I was sitting there going, guys, there's this thing called Asia Pacific. Yeah. And I was like, China is about to boom. Japan is a giant running market. South Korea is a giant market. We need to also put the same level of attention on Asia. And I got hit a brick wall. So I kept chipping away. And they finally gave in and said, okay, we'll send you down to Japan and we'll give you one tooling, which is a mold. And so when in Japan, we found the god of last making because Japanese feet are very, very different to European, a lot wider, different gait cycle, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, we created our first Japanese-inspired running shoe, which is super low to the ground. And somehow they all got New Zealand names. So it was Adizero Kaha, Adizero Mana.
Yeah. Wow.
And just amazing attention to detail through the Japanese lens of design and development. And they worked really, really well. And they said, okay, we're going to move you to Japan. So I was like, okay, cool. Went to Tokyo, found an apartment, all the rest, came back. And Klaus said, I'm sorry, we've changed our mind. We're going to move you to Hong Kong. And I was like, oh, yeah. All right. At that stage, I knew Hong Kong well. I didn't know Japan that well. And either would have been a gift, right? But so they moved me to Hong Kong to be the head of running for Asia Pacific to start with. And then after, I think, a year, I became in charge of all sport performance categories for Asia Pacific. So, yeah, it was basically the UN peacekeeper between headquarters and the markets here. So I'd go into China, Japan, Korea, the big markets, India, and say, what do you need to win? Go up to the global business units and try and get them to develop products so we could win, but also the tools and content and the go-to-market strategy to actually win the Asian consumers.
Huge job for anyone at any stage of their life. But at 27, are you doing sort of 80-hour weeks? Are you still have a social life? Are you out there partying? Like, what does behind the scenes look like?
Hong Kong, Lang Kwai Fong, never heard of it. I was actually, when I got to Hong Kong, I didn't really know anyone. And I remember walking out of the apartment the first weekend and the ABs were playing somewhere in the world. And I see this group of obviously Kiwis and Australians hanging out of this bar in Happy Valley. And I walked in and standing there by myself, and a guy comes up and said, "You're not Zion, are you?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I'm a mate of Tomo's. This is the Happy Valley Rugby Club. Welcome to the family." So it was awesome. It was just all of a sudden, met these guys, and so really, really lucky there. But yeah, it was serious hours. 1 week you're in China, the next week you're back to Hong Kong, the next week you're up into Southeast Asia. And I think what was amazing is just having the ability to spend time with each of those unique countries and understand their cultures, or try to, and realise that you're a guest in their country, not here to say this is what you need to do. I would always flip it, but also try and find a way to make sure they understand the global strategy and why we're here and what we need to do. I'll tell you a story about cricket and soccer in India as well if you want. But it was just really, really cool because you got all of a sudden got to be exposed to 13 different cultures. It was just amazing. It's just loved my time in Hong Kong. So I had 5 years there before I moved to South Korea.
Were you always like a connoisseur of culture?
No, not at all.
So it was a learnt behaviour as you travelled around?
Yeah, learnt behaviour. And also I started, actually when I really started reading was in Hong Kong, because I used to travel by subway from where I lived, and then caught the ferry, the Star Ferry across the harbour, which is just an awesome way to start the day, especially at night coming back to Hong Kong and all the lights are going off. So I'd fill in my time by reading on the subway, and so I then really started reading about history and cultures and geographies, etc. So that was, I think, the fix that gave it to me of, really love learning about other parts of the world.
So sorry, Steve, was it more ask questions about your clients, what they're needing, and then meld it all together?
Yeah, always use your taringas first, right? Yeah, and when I was growing my team in Asia Pacific, I was like, our role is to serve the countries. Yeah, yes, we're trying to guide them and direct and provide the support, but ultimately, if you go in and tell the Japanese team you're doing this, and they'll sit there and nod, they're not going to do it. Yeah, you need to make sure you understand how does the consumer think? How does the customer think? How do you put the blend of both of those and get the right product and give them the right level of support and tools and marketing freedom to a degree that can connect to their consumer? Yeah, because if it's been done in Europe and you think that's going to work in every country in the world, you're talking to yourselves. And that was a big part of our success in the United States, is we managed to get the support from global to understand we needed different tools. Yeah, we needed to have a different tonality. We needed local assets. We needed local partners. Sorry, I shouldn't say the word assets. Local partners that really connect with the kids on the street. Yeah, and the kids on the street in Harlem are very, very different to the kids on the street in Arkansas or Alaska. Yeah, so it was just making sure that you always realise that I'm here to serve, and if I can do that and give them the right support, then they'll grow.
To connect you to USA, which I'm really excited to talk about. In 2008, the global financial crisis hits. Adidas has a restructure, dismantle the regional office. You get sent to South Korea, director of the Reebok's brand, which is Adidas owned. Reebok. And you become managing director.
We mean what you know, mate.
Of Adidas South Korea.
That's very quick.
So this is a country with a population of over 10 times New Zealand, 2 billion turnover type business. And again, you smashed it by using your relationships, success working with the retailers, huge understanding of culture and what works. You pick up Adidas Young Leader of the Year award around this time. Is there this sort of growing brand of this guy, Zion, is destined for the top?
So when we dismantled the regional office, I can't remember the size of my team, but let's say it was 10 to 15. My biggest fear was letting them down. So I made sure every single one of them had a great opportunity to move somewhere in the world or stay and move to Adidas Hong Kong, the local subsidiary outside of the regional office. And was successful in making that happen. Went and saw my boss at the time, and he goes, "Forget anything?" I was like, "Shit, who have I forgotten?" He goes, and he's like, "You." But seriously, I was like, so hard for everything that we had achieved, because the region had gone from this to this. We had Beijing Olympics, so we're lucky. China was exploding. We got what we needed for Asia, so did Japan and South Korea. So the business had skyrocketed. So I was actually offered a couple of roles. So I was offered a potential role in Japan to be head of creation, which is not my thing. I was offered a potential to be in charge of the brand for Adidas China, or to move back to Germany to work with actually my boss at the time at Hong Kong, who is one of my closest mates, one of the guys I really, really look up to. And we were very close. And sneaky bugger, on the day when I was going to go and tell him, look, I'm not going with you to Germany. I'm actually going to take the worst job on paper, and I'm going to go to Reebok South Korea. We're sitting there in Stanley, a nice little bay in Hong Kong. We're having a couple of beers, and at that stage, Kev had 3 young daughters, and one of them walks past by herself. I'm like, what's she doing? Hi, Uncle Zion. Big cuddle and kiss, and I'm like, oh, you bastard. Next one comes in, hi, Uncle Zion. Big cuddle kiss. So all 3 come in, and I looked at him like, we're probably 6 brewskis into it at that stage. Then his wife comes in, she goes, just sign the goddamn papers, Zion, or you'll be here all night. But it was actually quite hard, and it was a teary moment where I cried, he cried, and said, look, I'm sorry, I really want to continue to work with you, and I love working for you, and I've got lots to learn from you, but my heart's saying something else. I was just saying my mind and friendship wanted to go with him, but something was pulling me to South Korea. I wanted to have the opportunity to work on our brother brand, and I also wanted to have the opportunity to lead a market, where if I went back to global would have been another similar role of coordination between markets and headquarters or regional. This would have been my first real foray in a big size subsidiary. So I joined Adidas Group in South Korea and was the Reebok brand director, which is, again, the lowest job grade title that was put in front of me. But it just felt right. A friend was running it at the time, and went across there. And a couple of months later, I went up and saw him. I said, I'm no math expert, but can you help me understand this? And when Paul gets angry, his face goes red. His face started going red, and I was like, uh-oh. And he goes, how'd you find this? And I said, just things weren't matching up. And anyway, we had just acquired the brand recently. We found some undesirable business, so I found it. So we exited a few people out of the company, and our global CEO was flying in a few weeks later, and I said, I have to tell him. He goes, yes, you do. I said, this is not going to be fun. He goes, no, it's not. Because the company actually exposed some corruption in Reebok India, which cost the company a lot of money. And the region was very nervous about me exposing it and said, look, now's not the time. I said, sorry, it's my watch. I have to speak the truth. So slide 2, there was, you will fix this. There was and there was a very quick learning curve. It didn't matter. It wasn't me. I wasn't there. I found it. I was in charge then. He's like, you're responsible. You get this fixed. And I almost said, but it wasn't me. It was like, And then I realized that, no, suck it up. You're now in the big boy's chair. And I said, yes, we'll get this fixed.
Was that your first time to address an issue of that magnitude?
Yeah, and first time in front of the global CEO, to present. So it wasn't fun. But we fixed it. And then a year later, I was promoted to the group president. And I actually said I'm too young. I was 35. In South Korea, it's very seasoned. Like it's such a hierarchical system. Everything's based on basic military. So when you become sergeant, which means general, you're normally in your 50s to 60s. So they were about to make me the sergeant at 35. I was actually, I think, on the front page of the Korean Post as the youngest sergeant, and I was like, this is not good. And I honestly didn't think I was ready. But I was fortunate. I asked the group to send me to London Finance Business School, and they didn't blink an eye, and they did, which was great. And then came back, and a year later I won the Chairman's Award for Leadership Excellence. And I think it was because giving love and attention to both brands equally. And that's someone that left Adi to join Reebok and got it fixed and got it growing, and then taking the Reebok thing.
What, was it as simple as adding skills to your armory to combat that situation in South Korea, or were there softer skills that you had to employ with people to get them on board if they didn't see you in the leadership position?
Yeah, it was a really scary time because you had to trust your gut instincts. And the company had started sending me to INSEAD College down in Singapore, which is great, but it's all textbook stuff, right? But the labour unions in South Korea are very vocal, and they're very active and can cause a lot of disruption. I had a different view. I mean, the labour union is your team, and they're teammates that work in your company. So I took a completely different approach and took the labour union leader out of a dark, dingy office straight away and put him up on the executive floor. Open door policy, sat down and said, look, before we talk anything, this is who I am. Tell me about your family. And over time, we built up trust. We changed the collective bargaining agreement from a document that was like this, that was so legally complex, to something that was very digestible. They were very worried, thinking that I was going to try and take away things. I said, no, this is just impossible to understand. If it's a win for the company and a win for our team, then it's a win for all. If it's only a win for the team and not for the company, it's not happening. And then fast forward year after year, we had such a strong relationship that we went from the lowest engagement result in the world to the highest. And we went from an average subsidiary to the most profitable subsidiary in the world. We actually won from the South Korean government best medium-sized company for our policies and processes and benefits and the way we treated our employees. So that was really, really cool. And the rules are there is just treat everyone as you'd like to be treated. Listen, but also build up that trust so much that you can say that ain't happening. Because sometimes you'd come in and said, please don't tell anyone, but I have to present this to you. I understand if you say no.
Yeah.
But hard, adds a lot of stress, because they're looking up to you. They don't see the bigger picture. They don't understand we've got goals to meet, the shareholder objectives. So the more you can explain it and the more you can demonstrate genuine care consistently, then it became easier and easier. But it was probably 25% of my time in South Korea was working with managing the union and the requests.
I want to move us into America because I've got so much to talk about. But just before I do, everything you've said radiates like self-belief and total confidence in your ability, even when these big meetings and it's a problem, you'll deal with it. Was there any self-doubt along these years? Like, 100%. Was there
all the time?
Yeah, how does that?
How do you keep that wolf from the?
Yeah, you got to compartmentalise, right? Yeah, and I think I've learned to become pretty good at that. But there was a stage there I had to exit a senior leader in the Korean team. He hadn't done anything wrong, but he wasn't what we needed to go forward. And this was in a very delicate space in the people and culture side of the business. And I lost sleep for weeks and weeks leading into this, and treated him with utmost respect from my view as possible. Had the board's backing. But again, when someone hasn't done anything wrong, so to say, but wasn't right for where we needed to go, and he just didn't see why, I was doubting myself. I was like, am I making a big mistake here? Am I opening up a can of blah, blah, blah that I'm not going to be able to manage? And he went to the board and said he's making mistakes, said we back Zion and we know what he's doing and he has our full support and we thank you for everything you've done and it's time to go. But there are moments of people say, I know it's right. I cry BS. There's a lot of times that you've just got to trust your instinct, but also make sure you've done the preparation. And if the preparation's there and you trust your instinct, and if you see it's not going right, fail fast. Because sometimes it's not going right. Okay, that's a dumb idea. Let's chop it and own it, and completely own it, and don't point fingers at someone else. And also, when the team does really well, it's them that did the mahi. It doesn't matter where the idea came from. End of the day, it's the troops on the ground that do all the work.
And this is all learnt behaviours on your journey, right? Because if the sensational story is from high school dropout to president, so you're learning these things on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
I
think you learn from when you do things right and you see how they react. And when you get that letter slipped under your door, and I got a letter from someone who's short version. In Korea, it's very, very strict about when you get married and who marries into the family. And a lot of it's back then was still selected. This young guy came and see me and said, hey, struggling, I love her. They don't want me in the family. What would I do? What should I do? I was like, do you love her? Yes. I said, go for it. I said, don't worry. And the family actually came to see me. And he was high up in politics in Seoul. And I said, you're not allowed in here. If you're going to treat him like you're, And they were screaming out in the lobby, like trying to get into my office. And I said, team, don't let him in here. It's not going to go well. Anyway, I was invited to the wedding. And on the groom's side, there was no one but me and a couple of others. It was heartbreaking, absolutely heartbreaking. Fast forward a couple of years later, photos of the babies and the family, the letter from the wife saying, thank you so much for being there for him. No one else was there for him, even my dad, and now a great relationship and all the rest. So it's just those things that when you get those little moments of seeing someone else, whether it's on the personal front or professional front, success, that's what energizes me.
Yeah, because I want to pause there because that story's got nothing to do with selling shoes. So do you get greater satisfaction in the development of the individual than the success of the business? Yeah,
I was asked when I left the States, what's the one or two memories that stand out? I said, none but seeing your people grow, and especially when you give them a bit of a tough time. There's a certain person that we put into a position that was great at a certain position, but it was 2 steps up. And I was like, I'm going to put you in that position, but you're not going to become a senior vice president day one. You're going to be a vice president and you're going to prove to me, but more importantly, in the back of my mind, to the rest of the organization. Otherwise, they'll see this giant step and you'll be set up for failure. And she didn't see that. Anyway, she crushed it. Like she was killing it, as we knew she would. 6 months later, we were at a sales launch and tapped her on the shoulder and said, can you go and order a bottle of champagne? She's like, what for? I said, just go and get a bottle of champagne. Sat down and slid across the piece of paper, congratulations, you're the new senior vice president of XYZ. And she broke down in tears and she said, the best thing you've ever done. Because I was like, A, you got to prove it, and then B, make sure that the organisation sees that you are at that level. Otherwise, it's quite tough.
And is that a callback to Ross Dallow and paying it forward?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think it's when you see others success and grow, and when they come in and they give you that special message, and the leaving messages when I left the States, etc. I've just Kimmy and some others did this incredible video that I'll cherish forever, where they just absolutely roasted me to death. But it was epic, and I realised then it was not about the growth. It was, again, the connections that you had with people and the love that you end up sharing. It was good people.
So it's time to talk USA. So you moved there in 2014, general manager of Adidas North America, and then become president. So first off, what's that process like? How do you get made president? Is it a phone call? Is it a handshake? Is it a
vote normally, isn't it?
Yeah, so actually my first role was brand director, which I was very nervous about because I'm not a brand director. So that's when you're in charge of the product side of things. I wasn't worried about, but brand communications, storytelling, content, digital, and the sports marketing side. Yes, I know sport, but I didn't know American sport at all. Outside of what you've seen on TV. So a New Zealander coming from South Korea to stand up on stage, and the business had been going downhill year after year after year. You've got Nike and Jordan and Converse and Lulu and Under Armour at that time was a runaway freight train. And you're the guy that's going to tell us how to fix this brand. Pretty hard first speech.
What college did you go to?
yeah, exactly. Really hard first speech. And it was really a speech of, you're going to have to trust me. And I remember standing up and showing pictures of my family and pictures of the flags of the country that I'd worked in. And I also wrote on the screen, this is what you can expect from me. And I think it was the first time they'd seen a leader be super vulnerable. And I was like, this is what you can expect. And the last slide was actually, I'd gone round to meet my individual frontline. And I said to them, if there's one thing that's a definition of success between me and you, at the end of this year, what is that? And some could answer straight away. Some took some time. I didn't put their names, but I put that on the screen. And I said, this is my commitment back to my front line, that there's green lights beside every one of these by the end of this year. And you can just see the room relax. Okay, that all sounds genuine. Now show us. And fast forward a few months later, put that tick, 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 tick. So I really made a concerted effort to make sure.
Have you got a team helping you work on that idea of the speech you're giving and the slides?
Not at that stage.
That's just you.
Not at that stage.
You're just thinking this is the way to go
Kimmy
about
had just
it.
started as my assistant, so I'd put that together myself at that stage. That was like literally straight off the plane. Here I am. So that was tough first 12 months because we were bleeding. We were getting squashed by everyone, and then was tasked to build a plan to combat the competitors there. And we flew up to Germany with the president at the time, and we managed to get another $100 million of marketing funds, which we thought
with the president at the time. Sorry to interrupt. So you're like his right hand man
I'm
at this
product
point?
manager, so I'm not the general manager at this stage. So just in charge of the brand.
Yeah.
So every category, all communications, all sports marketing operations. Anyway, we fly up and we come back thinking 100 million is enough to in addition. If I went back now, I would have asked for 500 million more. Yeah, but we knew we wouldn't have got it at that stage because our business, we hadn't proven ourselves. 2 new guys put together, figure this out. So the president at the time was the ex-CEO of Adidas TaylorMade Golf, and he had taken TaylorMade to the #1 golf brand in the world. So he was down in Carlsberg, California, loving it. I'm in South Korea, loving it. All of a sudden, it's 2 strangers put together. He's calling me. He said, "Do you know anything about the States?" I was like, "Nah." So he's like, "No disrespect, but I don't want you." I was like, "I don't want to be there." Yeah. And it was a rough start, because I was used to being president. He was used to being a CEO of one of the company's sidearms. I thought I was doing everything right, and he had a different opinion, and he told me a new one day, and I thought that was it, but we managed to fix it, and from that moment on, it was a very, very special relationship, and I learned a lot from Mark, and we figured out what our yin-yang was, and he's like, "Right, I'm going to do this, you do this," and it worked. We stopped the bleeding, and we turned the brand around in year 2. Then in year 3, I think we grew 500 million, and year 3 was 1 billion. So we took us roughly from 2 billion losing money to when I left, it was 6 billion US and the highest profit ever. And along the journey, there was a lot of challenges. This wasn't grey, but it was, to your point, it was a lot of learning constantly, going to high schools and seeing how strong sport is in a high school, and seeing a stadium in Texas at a high school that's $55 million. That's built for the local football team, real football. It was awesome.
Turning a company from 2 billion to 6 billion. That goals, Shay?
Yeah.
Something to aspire to. So, but the president. So, was the president thing on the cards? Like as this was going on, you're like, okay, I'm headed towards this job.
So, secret was in my contract was based on you proving yourself and based on certain thresholds being met. That will be a conversation. However, there was a CEO change through that. So then the new CEO comes in. My first presentation to him, he interrupts me on slide 2 and said, "Can you tell me why a New Zealander is running Adidas America?"
Shit.
Is that CEO Global?
Yeah.
What do you say?
Oh, you get squeaky bum.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, number 1, we're a global company. Number 2, look at the flags on the screen of my front line. It was very diverse. I think it's super important to have diversity in the team. I've got, at that stage, 20-odd years history in the company. My job was also to unite Europe and the US, and it's working. He said, "You're not answering my question. Surely you would agree you need an American running America." I said, I politely strongly disagree. Yeah.
Fuck, that takes some stones.
He's testing you?
Oh, no, he was deadly serious. And he's Danish, by the way, and we're German. So I was like, "Don't see on." It was very, very clear. Like, he wasn't unhappy with me. It wasn't personal. It was just a very direct question. I was like, "Okay, we've got a new chief in town, and it's going to take some getting used to." And and the other person was a very different type of leader. I won't compare the two, but it was a lot more family environment prior to that. So I was like, "Okay, this is game on from here on in." Our first meeting, one-on-one, didn't go that well. Mark, the prior president, walks in. He goes, "Hey, buddy, that didn't go well." Mark would always tell you the truth, a big smile on his face. I said, "Why?" He said, "You haven't got the company values on the wall." And I had behind my desk, "He tangata, he tangata, he tangata." And the chief asked me, "What is that?" And I said, "That's why I come to work." And he's like, "Why isn't the company values?" I said, "The company values are all over this campus. These are my values. And if I don't live by those, it's just that reminder I'm here to serve the people." And he didn't like that. Anyway, to be fair to him, he also said, "You prove me wrong and I'll get you the job." And
what was there a moment where you got you were right?
Well, it was actually when Mark had said, "Okay, Mark came and said, look, this is yours." He said, "I can't, you're ready." I can't remember the exact words. And obviously he must have had a conversation somehow, what are my chances of getting it? Because it wasn't looking like that at all. They were looking at potentially sending me somewhere else in the world. So still staying in the company, but somewhere else that because they were potentially looking for that American to lead us. But I actually saw the email thread from the CEO to the other board members, and he was very supportive. And he's like, unless anyone disagrees, Zion is the new president of Adidas North America. So I also thank him for that.
I don't feel like I'm overhyping it, but this is one of the biggest jobs in the world, right? Like, can you give us a snapshot of what the president of Adidas for North America actually oversees, and the money involved and the people?
Yeah, so it started with people at that stage. Well, we end up around 12,500 people.
Under your employ.
Correct. And that's USA and Canada. So we had a team based up in Toronto overseeing the Canadian side of things. It's everything. It was from every single product that is brought into the market, every single athlete that we partner with. So that could be from a college that we sign, like a University of Miami that we brought on board, took it off Nike. That was Nike's first ever college they sponsored, and we went and got them.
Yeah, and that's a prestigious football program too.
It was just a massive win for us. To the artists, the likes of the Pharrells and Beyoncés of the world.
I'm waiting for these names to be dropped.
Okay. Sorry, I had to
tease them out.
I left a couple out there, by the
Don't
way.
worry, we'll get there. We'll pick your pocket.
To the athletes, so sports marketing team would say, you've got XYZ athletes coming in, and all of a sudden you're sitting there with a Von Miller Super Bowl MVP, or the next time Patrick Mahomes, or it's Aaron Rodgers, or all these sort of things. Just fucking blessed to be able to work in that. So obviously the finance, your legal, you name everything that comes under the entire country set of my responsibility, and also massive responsibility to the board and the shareholders. Because if America won, the brand would win.
And how many direct reports are coming to you?
Yeah, so too many, and that's not. It got too broad. I think the good number is 8, but because of the scale of the company and the complexity, and then we changed our operating model. Some would report directly to global, but sit in my team, and some would report directly to me. So it's quite complex because if it reported directly to global, that person potentially has 2 kind of bosses. For me, though, I was always there for them. I'd never say, okay, you follow my rules and not their rules. Not everyone has that same sort of level of flexibility. Is it ideal? No, because they get confused and then they get a end-of-year result that I don't agree with. I'm like, you're better than that. And they're like, we agree. And I said, how can they give you that when they can't see what you're doing on a day-to-day basis? But yeah, it was a big responsibility, especially through crises, right? Because they look to one person. And so when you've got wildfires, and then you've got social unrest, you've got a new administration,
Sorry if this is a little bit in the weeds, but I'm always interested when someone has such a high power role, what your inbox looks like. Like, have you got an assistant who just is filtering everything and nothing gets through to you except only the most important stuff?
No. Well, I had amazing assistant with Kia, and Kimmy then Kia, and they could read my mind. They were basically they would know how I'd respond. They would know what should get through and what shouldn't get through. They should know people were always knocking, like, can we see Zion? And sometimes Kia was like, no, you can't. That's not important to him. And obviously you should use the right vernacular of it. But no, I read every single email. I can't stand when I see someone's inbox and they've got hundreds of emails for me. Read, respond, or read.
Not look at the Between Two Beers Gmail account. Whatever you do.
That would just, I get that old twitch. So for me, get it done, file it, or if it's still sitting in there, it means I need some time to think about it. But very rarely is something in there for longer than a week or 2.
I'd heard a really interesting snapshot of how you sort of managed your time, and it was that you would give these reports, a fortnightly check-in, and it would be their time. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so when you get, I think I had 14 direct reports. If you're not disciplined in your time management, then it can easily give the perception that you're favouring a certain division or person. So if there is obviously a burning topic, so at one stage we had major supply chain disruption. So I was spending a lot of time with the distribution centre teams and the supply chain leader, because that was the right level of energy and focus that I needed to put on. So what we had is also a disciplined process that every single person in my front line would be treated equally. So the fortnightly meeting that you just talked about, or bi-weekly, because Americans couldn't understand fortnight.
They can now. It's that game. A
Exactly.
popular game.
Is their time. So you bring to me your non-urgent things that you want to update me on. We go for a walk, we go to the pub, we can, whatever. If you don't need it, you can cancel it, but I'll never cancel it.
How long do they get?
1 hour.
1 hour.
Yeah. So it actually made for things to be a lot more efficient. And when you actually stack it up and they know that that time is there versus those emails or versus the sporadic pop in, and all of a sudden you got 10 minutes of disruption every hour, my time all of a sudden was disappearing. So I was like, let's be really disciplined. We have our monthly meeting. We've got our individual. We have our team offsites every quarter. We have biannual strategy sessions. If we stick to this, it actually represented less than 10 to 15% of my time on an annual basis.
Yeah.
And then everyone thought, well, I know I've got Z on all the time. But when you actually break it down.
Is that different to the reverse mentorship?
Yeah, that was just, so that was areas where I could see trends or a company would all of a sudden say, okay, this is going to be a new priority. One of them was around loyalty and membership. And I got it, but I didn't have any idea around what it took, etc. So I went and selected, just happened to be her name started with Z as well, or Z. So there was a big Z and little Z. Everyone else used to say she's the real big Z and I'm the little Z. Anyway, so she was reverse mentoring me around loyalty and membership. So every month she would come in with a well-prepared overview. She'd send me the pre-read. I'd have an hour and she would educate me on one thing. So I said, don't make it two. Educate me on one thing in that 1 hour. So I know enough to not ask dumb questions, but also know enough to be dangerous and say, okay, let's do more of that.
Yeah.
It was cool. So poor thing, she was so nervous the first time. Then at the end, she was just roasting me all the time.
I love that.
Oh, she's one that I'm proud of. She's now about to move up into another bigger role in Europe and become the head of Europe loyalty and digital experience, whatever it's going to be. So it's cool.
That is really
nice
cool.
to see them.
All right, I'm going to go after some stories now.
Yeah, I wanted to geek out too.
Yeah, we've built a bit of a base, but tell us about Patrick Mahomes and your relationship with him and what happened there.
The relationship's really with a couple of guys in the sports marketing team that had known him as he was coming through his college. And they're like, hey, this guy's special. And he was actually at a Under Armour school. So he wasn't wearing our cleats in college. And you can't go and speak to an individual athlete at college. That's against NCAA rules. But the team had built up a relationship with him through a personal contact in the company that once he left college and you start going to all the camps, etc., we managed to secure him into an Adidas individual contract, which means he'd wear our cleats and he'd wear our gloves. Prior to that, thanks to Mark, the prior president, who was a massive Green Bay Packers fan, managed to get Aaron Rodgers wearing our product. And Aaron was on fire. I think he won the MVP that year. I can't remember. But he threw this Hail Mary pass one day and he was wearing, obviously, our brand new cleats because we were not known for football cleats at all, right? We've been laughed at. And we came out and said we're going to be the number one football cleat company in the United States in the next 5 years. I remember saying that to Dick's Sporting Goods and they laughed at us. We got the number one selling cleat within 3 years. Anyway, Aaron threw this pass. It was just this amazing Hail Mary. They win the game. And on ESPN, they would say, talk us through. He said, I've got brand new Adidas cleats. And it was like, it was priceless. So we were like, but anyway, Patrick came on board and we knew he was really, really special. And I had the opportunity to invite him up to headquarters because they would always come in and they would go into the innovation, make sure the product we're making him was perfect. Because Adi actually built the company on making athletes better. And so we managed to get him on stage. So I got to open up and one of the guys interviewed him, could be better than me, trying to fudge my way through it. And then fast forward into COVID, Patrick's won a Super Bowl at that stage. I was down in Miami. I was in the NFL suite. Nike's the sponsor of the NFL. And they were playing the 49ers. And the Chiefs come back in that last quarter. And I wasn't really hiding my emotions that well. And I'm screaming and jumping up and down. And the Chiefs win, and the Nike guys just all stood up and just left the suites because I'm high-fiving the NFL, jumping around. But anyway, his contract was coming up for renewal. And obviously in COVID, we were going through crisis management. So investing more money into athletes when they're not playing There's no sport. We don't know how long this thing's going to last. We're in financial troubles. Like, can we pay our employees, let alone extend an athlete? And again, football in Germany is not known like football in the United States. Like, if you're not on the football field, you're no one. It's like saying if you're not on the soccer field, what they call it football in Europe, you're not the brand. I was like, well, you've got to understand. It's great that we've got Major League Soccer. It's fantastic. We have to be in football. We have to be in baseball. We have to be in basketball. We have to be in college. Yes, that was a constant battle to educate everyone in Europe how important and how broad sports are in the United States. So anyway, we're doing the pitch, and I'm on Zoom, and I'm sitting in Portland, and I'm nervous. Like, if we lose Patrick, because Nike was obviously offering us a ton of money, we couldn't compete with their money. We're doing the pitch, and we're like, hey, we want to make a training shoe for you. The golf guys are interested in doing product with you because he loves golf and he's an amazing golfer. And halfway through, he's like, Zion, you guys have been good to me. You've been so loyal to me. Stop. Let's keep this going. And he said, I've got no interest in going anywhere else. Let's keep this rolling. And I'm like, yo.
Is that a little Jerry Maguire?
Mate, I was just, my face lit up. The team just said, mate, your face on Zoom was just like, this, boom. And I thought, that's sensational, because I had to battle to get the funds out of the board and all the rest. The most humbling moment was about 24 hours later, and I'm reading ESPN, and Kansas City Chiefs announced Patrick Mahomes' extension for $525 million.
It's just a different world, isn't it?
So I was like, next time he said, I could see, man, that you're going through so much pain. And he's like, I don't want to put you through that. I knew I had this deal done, so you're another $1 million, didn't matter jack shit.
Can we? Oh no, please finish just, Mahomes.
Like, that was, he's just a humble human. And you could see when he's in the campus, and the way he spoke to everyone, and the way he holds himself. And yes, he wears all the stylish stuff in there, but when you see the real Patrick in those environments, he's just a great human. And I just loved watching him on quarterback. Just seeing how people get exposed to him on that documentary on Netflix. They're like, oh, this guy is amazing. I was like, Kiwis just don't get who Patrick Mahomes is, and fingers crossed he does it again this season.
One of the other things that Kiwis don't often get is a Super Bowl. And when you're president of North America, what does Super Bowl week look like in Miami in 2019, very specifically?
Next question. I don't remember much. It was, which one was that?
That was Guns N' Roses and Snoop Dogg on night one, Lady Gaga on night two.
That might have been with a couple of All Blacks around as well.
Yeah. That's an unbranded party, because if word got out, you'd have 10,000 people flooding downtown Miami.
That was a good one. That was an absolute ripper. Actually, a good mate of mine fell asleep standing up in the Guns N' Roses concert, so that takes talent.
Yeah.
Hey, Simon Rupapura.
Is that after
he's one of our sources?
Is that after the text from you saying, "Hey, bro, fancy coming to the Super Bowl? You've just got to get yourself accommodation in downtown Miami." Yeah,
he did it, and then he fell asleep standing up. I've got a photo of it to prove it as well. That was just cool. You got Snoop doing his thing, and actually, I was invited to. When in San Fran Super Bowl, Snoop was playing, and he's up on a high thing, and I went up there, and there's a strange smoke surrounding it. Get up there, and we do the photo thing and shake hands, and he goes, "You're the crazy dude from South Korea, right?" And I was like, "That's right." When we're in Korea, we got Snoop to come down and do a concert with 21, a girl band, where the Koreans said, "You're crazy." And so no one knows him. Sold out, and was just epic. Yeah, so it was a pretty amazing memory that he's like, I've met you before.
Well, I've heard that about you, that you've got an incredible ability to recall names, small details from interactions from years gone by, and it does make people feel incredibly special, particularly your staff at Addy.
What was that, Bob?
But is that something that you've honed over the years, making people feel important, or does it just come naturally to you? It's not an act.
I think numbers over time started becoming natural, and the team stopped presenting numbers because they said he won't forget. So I was like, that's not what you presented 3 months ago. And they're like, so they were like, okay, let's make sure whatever we put on the screen is right. I think just the concentration of trying to be present is something I've really worked on in recent times, because in that role, if you start thinking about the next one and you start sort of tune off for 20, 30 seconds and you're making decisions to the tune of, significant funds, you can make mistakes really quickly. And that's where, again, I was so lucky to have an amazing team around me Kimmy would brief me before every meeting. Okay, this is what we're going into. This is the context. This is either information or it's discussion or decision time. And then Kia would make sure afterwards I had 15 minutes with her or Kimmy to whatever had to be done would get done.
Yeah.
So I could then, switch off. What's next? Switch back on, go back in. One thing I wasn't great at and I'm trying to work on now is more listening. So every now and then I'd say, right, I'm just going to listen as hard as I possibly can, write down things to try and make the meeting more efficient. And I think when you did that, I'll never forget the response from them saying, hey, man, you're just so good that you just listened and then you just had your questions at the end. We're going to all try and do that. Yeah. And I pretend I did it all the time. I was like, okay, good feedback.
Shay, how dare you derail our celebrity segment? Because I'm not done.
Oh, we're tapped out.
No, there's a few names left.
Kanye, when he bought his Yeezys in the Adidas collab, is that you? Is that going through you?
No. So I was there, and that was my second year. So that was All-Star Weekend in New York in February 2015. And we launched the first Yeezy shoe. I think it was called the 750. Actually, I've got 2 pairs tucked away somewhere in my garage.
Yeah.
And that was a really pivotal moment for the brand. At that stage, Kanye was in a good space. I mean, he's a creative genius. Whatever people say, when he's in a good space, whether it's music or art or footwear, he was off the charts and saying. We were struggling at that time. We did a really cool sort of, Nike was throwing the party, we were crashing it. So we were trying to figure out little pop-up things and we launched the first shoe there and it just shut down. Yeah, it was just insanely good. So that gave us that first little spark of, wow, Adidas are really starting to get into the culture side of sport, music, art of the United States, and they get us. A few months later, Kanye sung the national anthem at a Chicago Bulls game, and he was wearing the triple white Ultra Boost, which is a running shoe built for the best running shoe, not for street, but he wore it, and that just exploded the Ultra Boost.
Is it?
Yeah, it just went batshit crazy. Yeah, we actually couldn't keep up, and then we had to try and manage it, and everyone's like, we need this color, this color, this color. So that was not planned, and we'd obviously seeded in product, but no one could say we planned that. Yep. He just wore it and did an amazing national anthem, and at Chicago, which is his hometown, things went really, really well. And I've had some close friends work with him for multiple years, and I've seen a gymnasium full of potential Yeezy products. And he'd walk around and, out of making up numbers here, 75 shoes, he'd say those 3. And like the other 72 are pretty cool as well. Yeah. So I did meet him, who came and did a Sunday choir at the campus. He had said something that we weren't happy about, and his way of saying sorry was to come with this choir and set up this amazing circular thing, and it was amazing. They started and he stopped it. He said, not good enough, blah, blah, blah. Started again, it was even better. And then unfortunately, obviously, what's happened in his personal world, and obviously, I don't want to go into whether he's taking medications or not, but he got off that tangent of when he was in a really good space, and the company made the right decision to part ways.
Was that your call?
No, so he never reported into the North American business. So whilst we had people in North America working on it, they always reported directly into global.
Yeah. Incredible stories. The other one I'm keen to touch on is Pharrell, because one of the videos I've seen, it grabs your attention. Pharrell, one of the biggest music stars in the world, and he's speaking about you specifically, about what an impact that you've had and how good you have been. Where did the relationship with him start?
Yeah, so Pharrell was also one of our amazing partners, and when I moved to the States, then he either I was going to him or he came to us for some event, and the person working with him is a close friend of mine. She's now actually his manager for the human race side of things, and got to meet him and just had a great chat, and we just had an instant connection. One of the most intelligent guys I've ever met. Very calm, very captivating. Every word that comes out, you're just like, oh man, I wish I was that smart.
He'd be good for the podcast. Maybe get him
put
on.
a line in.
But also really intense. Yeah. So when he's with you, it's on. Yeah. But we were talking about a few things, and could we try this and could we try this? And he said yes, and they ended up being amazing collaborations that we did some significant business on it. And then we just became closer and closer. And I'm not saying we're mates, but had the opportunity to meet him multiple times. And then one day he was unhappy with something, and rightfully so. And he gave it to me direct and said, "You're 100% right, and this is what we're going to do to fix it." And he just looks and goes, "You're a man of your word," because we fixed it. And then it was Super Bowl Miami. And he came in, and we had basically a off-site Super Bowl Adidas home. So you had all the best athletes, artists, musicians coming in and out. It was Jamie Foxx is sitting in there talking to. It was just insane.
Good
right?
joke.
It was just insane. Pharrell comes in. We had to have a chat about some business things that were going well, and he said, "Hey, something in the water in Virginia. I want to do this event and put Virginia back on the map, and I want to make sure we're giving back to where I came from." I said, "Well, Pharrell, we'll be there. We'll support you." I said, "My great-grandfather's from Virginia." He just stops, looks at Rachel. And Rachel was Australian manager, worked for us at that time, now works for him. He's like, "Is he telling you?" He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Why did you never tell me?" And he's like, "Is your great-grandfather black?" I said, "Yes." And he just looks at me, "Brother." and I think because I didn't tell him that, to use as leverage, also gained even more trust.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's like, "Hey, I need your support for this event." And we had this amazing basketball court that we built for 747, which is this amazing Adidas event that we threw in LA around All-Star Weekend. And he goes, "Do you think you can build a basketball court like that on the beach in Virginia?" And I was like, "Yes, we can. We'll do that." And I said, "But also we will make sure that we have our recruitment and talent acquisition team there. We'll have our design team there. So as these kids who are growing up in some tough neighborhoods, they can see what it takes to get a foot in the door with us. We've got jobs available. If there are talented artists there, we need designers to come out of places like Virginia, to come to Portland, Oregon, teach us differently." So we send our HR team there. What he didn't tell me was in 2 weeks' time. Because I said, "Hey, what date next year?" And he goes, "Oh, no, it's this year in a couple of weeks' time." My team were behind me.
What you got,
like,
Z?
Like,
Because how much money would that be to do that?
oh, yeah, the basketball court alone was probably over $1 million, but it was built. So I was just like, well, we'll have to pack it down anyway.
Yeah.
The team is, so we made it happen, and the court, I think the court might still be there, but it was epic. Yeah, on this beach, you've got this beautiful court. So he's singing out there at night time, hundreds of thousands of people. And so
That's the power you have. Someone whose relationship you value has an idea in 2 weeks, and it's $1 million spend, and you've got to decide whether or not that's a good use of company money.
Yeah, well, this is where we as a company, if you're happy to have these consumers buy your product in places, all throughout the United States, and then you're so happy to spend your money on the big glittery thing versus about these are the kids that actually pay our salaries. They're buying our product, they're wearing our product, they're endorsing us, and you don't really support the community in an authentic way, a really dangerous way to kill your brand fast. So the more we actually invested back into the community, we actually ended up setting up a fund with Pharrell to the tune of $10 million US, called Black Ambition, that every year we had budding entrepreneurs, whether they were Black or Latinx, would come to us and propose ideas, and we'd start basically a Shark Tank. And they would pick the best ideas, and I was lucky enough to present back to the inaugural year. Unfortunately, it was on Zoom and Teams because it was during COVID. But seeing them all burst into tears that they had the backing of Pharrell and Adidas and money to start their business ideas from a couple of presentations was something I'll never forget. They just... Some was 10 grand, some were a lot more money, but it's really cool. So he is someone that deep down inside is so committed to giving back, and just he's gone on to bigger and better things with a very large fashion brand right now.
It's doing all right. I'm
still waiting for him to send some samples down for me. I think I look all right in Louis Vuitton.
Last one I want to tick off. Lionel Messi to Inter Miami. What
I embellish a story so well.
Yeah, please.
So Inter Miami, so Major League Soccer, we have an amazing relationship with them. They're based up in New York, and they've just done this incredible job because soccer in the United States, 15, 20 years ago, nothing. When I got there the product wasn't that good. But year after year, it's just got better and better and better. And you're not getting these old retired players from Europe or wherever they are to come and play in MLS now. You're getting some of the best Latinx players coming across, and you're getting the Wayne Rooney still in great form. Anyway, one of the co-owners of Inter Miami reaches out to my head of sports marketing and says, I want to come and see Zion. And Chris is like, what for? And he said, I just want to come and show our stadiums. And he's like, it's a long way to come. And he's a Cuban in Miami, done really well in real estate. I've never met him before. I get the phone call from New York saying, hey, be careful about meeting individual owners. Otherwise, you have to meet with all 30, all the rest. And I said, okay, he's pretty adamant he wants to meet me. So he comes on in, great guy. Like within half an hour, I'm like, this guy's awesome. And anyway, he's like, here's my stadium. And I look at it, I'm like, pretty average.
Yeah.
Soccer's really moving ahead. Oh, that's my temporary stadium. They said you're the first person to say that. Here's what we're going to be building. I was like, holy shit. And I think they finished it now. It looks amazing. And I was like, you haven't come this far to just show me the stadium because, well, would you want Adidas on the side of it? And said, oh, I'd love to have that conversation, but buildings don't create connections with communities, right? Having their name on the side. And he goes, okay. So then the truth really comes out. And he said, look, we're thinking about trying to get Messi into Miami. And I'm like, okay.
Lionel Messi.
I'm like, let's think about this, right? He's not going to play anywhere else in the Liga, right? There's no way he's going to play for anyone else. I doubt he'll go to the EPL. Yeah, he's not going to go to Bundesliga. At that point in time, Saudi Arabia whole thing wasn't really on the horizon. There was no way he was going to go to Latin America. So I was like, if he's going to go anywhere, it's going to be the United States. And out of all the teams in the United States, where's he going to go? It's going to be Miami, right? Then you've got Jorge Mas Sr. and his brother, great humans, and a guy called David Beckham as the owners. And I was like, oh, yep. So anyway, I write to our global head of sport relations, who's an amazing guy. He's been with the company a long, long time. And said, put them in touch and told them this is their plan. And that was the end of my doings. And now if you watch the Beckham documentary, after that they went up and met him, and obviously the magic happened, and so I claim I got Messi into my
When you're sitting on a secret like that or a plan like that, are you like
that one I was like, I was like, because normally I'm like, okay, just because you've got this and this doesn't matter. But then I was like, this really makes a lot of sense. And when you see what Inter Miami were doing with the uniform, what they were doing in the community, like you drive around the streets and you see these awesome graffiti logos and obviously as soon as you get there, they win the league. Yeah, his first season winning the league, and the goals he was scoring were exceptional. So it was not a case of he's on his way out. Messi played some of the best soccer he's played, and now you can't get it into Miami jersey.
Yeah,
so it's insane.
Yes.
I think they sold 600,000 jerseys on launch day.
Do you get desensitized to some of the amazing things that you've been lucky enough to experience?
Yeah. Actually, it's like I've got to punch myself right. When I went to my 6th Super Bowl, I'm like, come on, you are lucky. Yeah. So it's I look back now and just like, man, there's a couple of things I actually declined. He's a fucking idiot. Yeah. Said no to the Masters. I can't play golf to save myself. I got invited to Augusta a couple of times. I was like, give it to someone who really, really. It was actually out of genuine intent, like give it to someone who love it.
I've got something on that weekend.
Oh, you idiot! Kentucky Derby was invited a couple of days, and I was like, oh, you idiot. But hopefully, I've still got a couple of contacts so I can sneak my way back in there. And
I bet.
Hopefully, you got to keep using those. They disappear pretty quickly.
I want to, before we move on to post Adidas, I just want to bring in some words from Kimmy, because I asked her, what you were like as a boss. So a little bit of reading here. She said, as his chief of staff, I was in every meeting and every Zoom call. I got to witness and learn from him in a way that most don't get. And he trusted me implicitly because he trusted me with the biggest projects that came our way. If he was unsure on something, he wanted to hear my opinion, or if he had questions, he would come and talk to me, and he validated everything I offered, either at the table or in private. And it meant a lot because I sometimes had to be his voice in meetings where he couldn't be including delivering bad news. Then sometimes people would then directly talk to him to get a different answer. And his first reaction was to ask, well, what did Kimmy say? and he would back what I said. And I think there's something beautiful about that type of leader, the type that you know what they are saying about you in a room that you aren't in. So I knew he had my back implicitly. I saw him live that life day to day, and I knew it. She honestly sent us about 20 voicemails, and they were all like full of praise for your leadership style. And just to sort of wrap up that sort of corporate leadership journey, is that just learning, getting better year after year, what works, soft skills and listening and delegating and trusting people? Are you just stacking your skill set to a place where you are a super boss?
It's getting warm in here, eh?
Yeah.
Thank you, Kimmy. I think I'm a person that when I give trust and they give it back in spades, then I'll be fiercely loyal to them. Yeah. So when people are like, "Oh, Kimmy said this," and I'll be like, "Don't try that with me, and don't do that to her or me." Yeah. So, and just knowing how hard they worked for me, in my role, and I've told her this, I never would have been president and or as successful as we were without the likes of her and Kia and KP and many others in the team. So I think it's also a case of I can only be as good as the great people around me and make sure that I'm looking after them and giving them empowerment, right? And giving them responsibilities. And yes, she's right. Some of the tasks I gave her, and she didn't even flinch, right? And she would always knock it out of the park. And it was just this case of, okay, what's the next level? What's the next level? What's the next level? And what's the next level? Sometimes I'd go in, I'd walk in, and I was like, there's no way I could have done anything in here as well as you guys have done. So, as you grow as a CEO, I think the more you realize your job is to be the facilitator of helping humans unlock their human capital, and supporting them on their way, and then also letting them fall over every now and then and saying it's okay. The better everyone becomes. So the higher you go up, ultimately, if you've got great people, the less you're actually doing of the day to day. But you've got to still make sure that you're pulling the right strings and heavily engaged in your people.
It's weird though, because for all her capabilities and all her skill set, she failed at getting you a salad that didn't have olives in it.
Rubbish, eh? So she failed a lot, mate.
For a whole year.
Yeah. And I could smell it straight away. Like, get that out.
But she said you just ate them. So the story is she
she used to try and hide them in there.
Well, she bumped up from PA to chief of staff. Yep. New EA assistant starts. First thing, I'll get you a salad. You say, yeah, I don't like olives, and Kimmy's face is like, what? I've been giving you a salad with olives for a whole year and you never said anything.
I felt sorry for Kia trying to live up to Kimmy's standards for those first few months. It was a couple of tense moments there, but afterwards they became just this unbeatable duo, which was awesome. Was there a question there?
No, there wasn't.
No,
it was a shit story that was locked away that I wanted to get out.
Yeah.
So we will.
A couple of things I don't like: olives, celery,
and shit stories.
Snakes and heights. Those are the four things. But any one of those in the way, I'm out.
I'm gonna bring you home.
I thought I'd lost it.
Yeah. I'm gonna save.
I was trying to listen really intently, like you were talking about, and I fucked it all up.
It's like you owned it. As long as you own it, it's exactly.
Right. I'm gonna bring you home, but I'm gonna go on a detour, and I'm keen to talk about family because we have had other corporate leaders and busy people that talk about the opportunity cost of. Yes, you've got these great jobs, but it's so demanding of your time. And you've got young kids, and you had family. And I'm wondering if when you're in these positions of power, what guardrails you put in to dedicate enough time for your family or how you handled that?
Yeah. But if I could go back and do it again, it would definitely be different. But when you're in the moment and you've got that responsibility / pressure, sometimes / stress, which is not a good thing, you do what has to be done because whether it's fear of failure or back to your question earlier, for me it was about constantly learning to get better and making sure our team was going to be okay. Because if I failed, it meant ramifications for other people as well. So not the best, in terms of managing that time because I'd say yes to everything. So you've got to be here, Zia, and I'd say yes. But I was also, once I went through the divorce, team knew when it was my time to pick up the kids, there was no way. Zion's gone. It was whatever time it was on the Wednesday afternoons, I'd be gone, and tried to not miss too many weekends. they got actually stuck here during COVID. New Zealand closed the borders. I was in the United States. And then COVID really hit Portland. So I said to my ex-wife, it's better you guys stay here. You're in the safest place in the world. We didn't really understand what was about to happen in America, and then everything started taking off. So I ended up doing isolations 4 or 5 times over a 2-year period. And during one of those trips, we were on a road trip with my son and daughter, and my son was very quiet, and I said, hey, Xavier, what's wrong? And he said, nothing, Dad. I said, no, what's wrong? He said, you're just a stranger now. Ooh, fuck. Yep. And my daughter in the back was like, that's not very nice. And she's trying to defend me. And I was like, he's right. Yeah. And I was like, son, you're going to have to trust me. He said, what does that mean? He said, you just have to trust me. At that moment, I was like, that's it. I'm done. Yeah. If they're not coming back, I need to make the decision that puts them first. And I just signed a 3-year extension. So I was loving, the best job, and I believe I had the best job in the company. I'm very biased, but I love living in the States because there's so much variety and diversity in different sports and musicians, you name it. But hearing that and then seeing them become more and more distant over time, and I've got to combine that with the isolation I'd done just before having those 2 weeks with the kids. I read a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware. I'd been introduced to that book by a guy who founded Nashville Football Club. I met this guy, and he was a billionaire. He made his money in chemicals, etc., or engineering, sorry. And I'm sitting beside him, never met him before. I said, why soccer club here in Nashville, Tennessee? Yeah. Because like country boys don't watch soccer. Yeah. And he said, I read this. He said, not the truth. He said, I read this book and realised I've done really well, and I wanted to try something different. And his manager was the ex-manager of Liverpool. So he surrounded himself with some great people. Anyway, so I bought that book knowing I'm going into isolation, and I read this book. And it's a true story about this Australian girl who's looking after people and on their deathbeds and all of their regrets. And yeah, obviously some of the regrets is not being a present parent or working too hard. And I was like, this is me. And then my son says that, and then I'm flying back 2 weeks later, and then I'm going back into that, and I was like, okay. And then we're then going back into Germany for the first time. Got the new contract, signed it, all the rest before I'd gone to New Zealand. Get to Germany, have dinner with one of the board members who was my boss at the time, and said, how's the family? I said, they're not coming back to the United States ever. And he said, okay, we'll just keep flying you back every 3 months. And I was like, no. I said, sorry, I've got one chance at this, and today is my day I hand across this piece of paper. And he's like, what's that? I said, it's my resignation letter. And he just laughed. He goes, he could not. He just thought, okay, you've been a joker as always. And I said, no, I'm resigning tonight. And he just kept laughing. Then he realised. I was like, I'm not joking. This is it's time for me to do the most important job. And then he just flipped straight away. Oh, well, who do we replace you with? Waiting for the thank you for this and thank you for that. Oh, you've sacrificed so much. So if I could go back time, I would have been a lot more disciplined around not missing birthdays or not missing first days at school, and not easy, because it would have been, you've had to have a lot of courage to say, no, XYZ board, I'm not going to be in Germany because that's the first day of school, or whatever it is. And that probably may have limited my career as well. But it's just not worth it, right? And I can say that now because I've done it right in life, but now I've found amazing opportunities that allows me to do this.
Yeah.
But also come home, take that year off, and reconnect with my kids was just so good. And then after a while, I was just so much more relaxed, and you're in the moment. You're not worried about the 500 emails and this and that. So I'm trying to make sure that I stay in that zone as much as possible.
So that was always the plan, to take a year off and not take up any opportunities and just totally unplug? Did it take a while for the brain to relax?
Yeah. It was a fascinating experience because I was getting a lot of phone calls. And as soon as I got back, there was an offer for an amazing role in New York, and I was like, what am I doing? I was entertaining the conversations and having some interviews, and they're like, hey, we want to fly you up here. And I was like, no, stop it. It's your ego talking. So, but I said to myself, take a year off. Haven't been in New Zealand for a long, outside of holidays, reconnect, wind down. It took me 3 or 4 months to sleep properly.
Yeah.
I was waking up at 4, like, what am I going to do today? Get this done. And if I wasn't ticking it off, I felt like a failure. So it's funny how your body does have that muscle memory of go, 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 go. I was also worried about something called holiday heart syndrome, that if you've gone so hard, so fast for so long, when you stop, you can actually have health issues as well. Right. Have people fainting and, having heart issues because they've just gone so hard to stopping. So ended up, going and doing small things like getting your captain's license for a boat and bits and pieces like to improve. Mm-hmm. And then started looking at opportunities. So, but it was
before we jump to the opportunities. Are there parallels, or am I jumping to a conclusion? So we mentioned at the start that your father was absent for a large part. I think you met him when you were 16.
I started getting a much closer relationship around that age.
And you have a great relationship now. So you reconnected. It's similar with your kids, right? They're much younger, but you're reconnecting with them now. Like, the parallels are there, but what was it that reconnected you or strengthened that relationship with your own father?
Well, that happened around that, obviously 16, but it was more, I don't want to put a date on it, but I could see the effort he was putting in, and especially with the kids while I was off in the US, and he was trying to get the kids to school every now and then. And
your kids?
My kids, when they were stuck here. And then he'd come across to Europe and he'd come across to the States. But when I got out of isolation for the last time and walked into the apartment and opened up the spare bedroom cupboards, and there's all the stuff hanging up. And he's like, it's time we reconnect, son. And I was like, today? Yeah. I was like, I've just been away 20 years. He won't mind me standing in the store. I was like, fuck off. I just need some chill time. He's like, oh, no. We're going to spend a lot of time. I was like, not right now. So the last 2 years have been great. Yeah, he's spent a lot of time. He's moved into my abode. He was living in a motor camp for a long time. It was not the best environment, not safe. Things are getting a bit rough out there. And so it's just nice that after all that hard work that I can offer that opportunity for him to bunk down. So the kids call him Grandpa Uber. So my deal with him is when I fly up, if you can pick me up and drop me off, that'd be appreciated. And just bunking. Except for today, he wasn't there. He prioritised my cousins before me. Interesting.
We're getting towards the end, but thank you so much. Like, this has been a fucking epic. But when I spoke to your friend Simon, who you mentioned before, acquaintance,
depends what comes out next.
He spoke about what you're doing now, and he said, "Look, I don't even want to say anything about it. I want him to tell." But he said, it's not leaving the dream job and moving back here. Perhaps not the path that you wanted it to take, but you have landed on your feet with this incredible role. So can you tell us what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of governance roles, but we'll put those aside, because I think what he's referencing to is I've been really fortunate to meet the founders of an amazing New Zealand story. And prior to talking about that, having that break I had I said, okay, what are my rules that I'm not going to compromise on? Yeah, number one is I need something that's flexible, that when I'm picking up the kids from school, I'm not feeling guilty. Yeah, if I've got to leave at 2:30, I'm picking them up. I'm taking them to wherever they need to be. Of course, I'll work at night once they're asleep. I need the flexibility to get to Auckland because my mum has very advanced Parkinson's. I want to spend time with her, and Auckland is my home. Yeah. Number three, excuse the French, but borrowing a rule from the All Blacks, no dickheads. I just wanted to be somewhere that it's just fun, as in not just joking around, but everyone is there for the same reasons and that real warmth and genuine reasons to want to work somewhere. Wanted to help a New Zealand company. I really didn't want to spend everything I've learned offshore to go and help another foreign. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it's just been cool to be able to help someone in New Zealand take things to the next level. So that year I took off, I was speaking to so many different companies offering, they'd reach out, and I just offered my 2 cents worth, so probably 3 or 4 calls a week, which is cool to broaden my network and do some speeches and all that sort of stuff. And also I wanted something that I could really make a meaningful difference and become a potential partner. So I met the founders of a New Zealand children's wear company called Jamie Kay. Her story, she'll kill me for saying this, but hopefully one day she'll be on your podcast, but she won't do it. It's come up to 11 years now that they started this company from their farm in Canterbury. because she wasn't happy with the quality of the product for their first child. And she's built it up through amazing, obviously, product and quality. And but the word I'd use is just utmost resilience. To see where they started to what she's achieved. When I first met her, I'd never heard of it. I'd been way offshore, and then when I finally went out there to meet them and saw what they did, and I saw how much opportunity, and also how humble they were. I think that was the most important thing for me, is just seeing the humility of these founders. And then they said, "Hey, we're looking for a CEO," and I was like, "There's no way a founder's going to give the keys to, Yeah. So I was very nervous about that, because you have to. I mean, it's always her company. I'm now a shareholder, but it's her company in my mind, and it always will be. I'll be just as passionate, but I want to always make sure that everyone knows it's what she's done over a long period of time to create this incredible business. We've now got 4 brands. As of last week, we just bought Merino Kids, another 20-year iconic New Zealand brand. So as we said, hey, let's build a strategic business plan first. If we both agree that this plan is the right plan, I'm more nervous in the plan than she is. I was like, this is a super mission. But now we really want to make sure we become this amazing global brand. So with my global experience, we're about to sign up as a fantastic partner in Japan. We've signed up some great people in Australia. We'll be spending a lot of time in the States over the next 3 or 4 months. So just really lucky to meet this humble leader that's created a powerhouse, and it's now my job to take the next level together. So she's obviously still side by side, and so she's our head of creative. But at the end of the day, mate, I'm still knocking on her door every second day. It takes a long time to learn these roles. Like thousands of people. Now we're 30 of us. So it's rolling up the sleeves, and half the time I have no idea how it takes, what we're talking about, what the systems are, the processes. So it's back to ground zero, but super excited. We're having a really good year, and looking forward to that.
What a coup for them, getting you as CEO as well. I know it's hard for you to see that end of it, but shit, could you have your company in any better hands?
I think hopefully it's the situation that in 5 years' time we look back and go, that was freaking awesome. But I've got a lot to learn, and I just really appreciate the trust. That's something that's, and the more we've worked together, the more the keys are coming across the table. So I might bring some of those back. Really excited. And it's Christchurch based as well. So it's another great reason to be close to my kids.
Yeah. How good. Shay, any last bits and pieces?
Yeah, you mentioned right at the top about being in a helicopter, like putting the cans on and being back in a helicopter. Is there a yarn around Monaco?
Nice.
World Land Bobsled?
Yeah, so I was in Rotorua at my sister's place at the time, and the phone rings, the old Motorola.
Yeah, the old flip number. Yeah,
I was a sales rep on the road, and answer it, and it was Nigel Avery.
Weightlifter.
Yep, weightlifter, triple jumper. His father, Sir Graham Avery's just done amazing things in New Zealand, athletics and wine. And Nigel, he was with North Shore Bays, and I was at Waitemata, right? And we were arch rivals. They had all the resources. We had a shed. And I'm like, Nigel and I never spoke. And he's like, how's your training going? And I was like, because they were trying to get me to come across. I'm like, mate, I'm not joining Bays. I'm not leaving Ross. I'm a Westie. I'm running for West Auckland. He goes, oh, no. We're going to the World Bobsleigh Push Champs. This is 96. And the brakeman's torn his hamstring. How's your training? And I'm like, yep, good as gold. And I was like, where is it? Sorry. And he goes, it's Monte Carlo. I said, mate, I can't afford to go to Monte Carlo. He goes, it's all paid for. And I was like, so I'm going to go to Monaco and push a bobsleigh on a track, just flat track, 50 metres, whatever it was. All expenses paid. Yep, I'm in. So I'm like, sweet. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm heavy in winter training. I was like, I've got to start doing some speed work. So we fly up there, and a great group of guys, and I've never pushed a bobsleigh in my life. So I'm like, when are we doing training? He said, you'll be right. Anyway, at the opening ceremony, we're at the palace. And as you do, you walk around and shake hands and kiss babies and talk to people. So I meet the captain of the Monaco team. And we're talking away for a good, decent amount of time. I was, man, your English is good. And anyway, I'm just talking like a normal Kiwi, and And he's like, hey, I've really enjoyed talking to you. Here's a personal invite to the closing ceremony at my personal nightclub and rah, rah, rah. Okay, great. Awesome, Albert. Thanks, mate. And I go back to Nigel sitting there, and he's just he's shaking. He's like, you know who that is, right? I said, yeah, it's Albert, the captain of the Monaco team. And he goes, do you know anything about royalty here? Nah. And he said, that's Prince Albert. Who's that? Then it all dawns. I was like, holy shit. And my potty mouth was going strong. And so I went to the private party afterwards and had a good night. And he said, what time's your flight tomorrow? I told him. He said, blah, 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 we'll pick you up. So cool. So I'm sitting down there. I'm like, man, I'm going to miss my flight. So I'm in Nice, and we're at I can't remember what the hotel, the Grand Hotel, where the Formula One comes underneath. All I know is as you drive out, you got to go left, head towards back into France. Driver comes out, goes right. And I'm like, excusez-moi. French is rubbish, right? Yeah. And what the French are like is not really responding too much. Anyway, we pull up, and there's the Palace helicopter sitting there waiting for me. It takes me across to Nice airport, and the boys are sitting on the plane. But on our first push, we're all going flat out. I'm the last man, obviously, to jump into the sled, and you got to get in the sled and go under this barrier, and then my job's put on the brakes. As I try to jump into the sled, my spikes hit the edge and slipped out. So we're going full speed. And Nigel, the other two guys, are big guys. I'm the skinny little runt. I'm getting dragged. And if I let go, I'm going to break probably bones. So I'm trying to stand back up to stop this 100 kg sled or whatever it weighs, plus 300 kg guys going full speed. I'm like, okay, that's dumb. So I go back down, getting dragged. I'm losing skin. And the guys have got their arms up because the time's fast. Because I just kept running to the last minute to try and win us. And then I just looked around, you could see he's trying to pull these brakes on. And I'm just like, oh my God. So I'm that guy that was the brake man that didn't manage to get in the sled on the first run. But the next two were okay.
Amazing.
But nowhere near as fast as the first one.
Yeah, that's gold. Good yarn to close with. Yeah. So I'm just going to tell a little story now, and then I'll throw to Shay to wrap up. But when I was talking to your friend Simon, and I asked him, what is it about Z that made him such a good leader and such a good friend? And he said loyalty. And I said, well, can you give me an example of that? And he said, well, when I was going through my divorce, Z had been through it about 12 months previously. And so despite being the president of a multi-billion-dollar company, one of the busiest jobs, he made time to book a holiday for us in Hawaii. He said, you sort of told him, we'll meet in Hawaii, we'll meet halfway, and you just spent 5 days with him just because you knew what he was going through from your experience, and you knew that's what you needed to do. And I just thought of all of the stories I told, that one stood out to me as such good integrity and such, your importance, like you're moving back for your family, you're there for your mate when you needed it. And I just think that story, along with everyone we spoke to, they love you there's so much love for you out there. And after talking to you for nearly 2 hours, it's obvious why. Yeah, it's a real special sort of leadership. So yeah, long-winded way of saying thank you so much for coming in and sharing it all with us. It's been such an epic, and I've learned a lot, and I can't wait to see what the next chapter holds. But throw to Shay.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
That's just a big whole monologue wrapping up the episode. Same thing. I can't echo what he said enough. I didn't know much about you prior to picking up research for this episode, but so deserving of the Kia Award was it last year? Year before, yeah. Like just a great New Zealander who's done epic things. And I think one of the best things is that humility and that ability to come back home. There was a line you said before about wanting to share what you've learned, not with another overseas company, but spread it here in New Zealand. We're so blessed to have people like yourself, but other great Kiwis who've done amazing things that do want to come home and make our place even better. But underpinning that is that desire just to be a good man and a good father to your kids. And that's such a great example for so many other people out there to look towards and to lean into. So fucking take my hat off to you for giving up that rock and roll lifestyle that you were living to just be a good dad. I think that's fucking awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Nothing more important, right? It's not the business card. It's being called that present father. So just lucky that I can now do that. And lucky I've got amazing people like the Simons and the world that have always been there for me as well, because it's payback, right? And I guess the last story I'd say is when I came back one year and the wife at the time said we're divorcing. I went into the office and the boss came in and said, "Hey, how's your holiday?" "Oh, it wasn't ideal." I said, "What?" So look, I said, "Where are you staying?" I said, "I just drove into the state of Washington and just found the first motel on the side of the road and just checked in." And he goes, "You're living in a motel in the state of Washington?" I was like, "Yeah." I said, "I don't want people to know." The next day he walked into my office, dropped his apartment keys. He had a penthouse downtown Portland. Said, "I've moved out. You're moving in as long as you need." It's like when people do that for you, and then you just never forget those moments of when you're in that real need, and when you see your mates go through it. It's what you do, right?
Yeah, I think that you can never overlook the ability of one person to change another person's life, right? It starts with Ross Dallow, it continues with Craig Lawson, you then pay it forward in spades. It's just cycles of the repetition of just never knowing what someone's going through.
That's right. Well, that's the most important thing. If you think they're struggling at work or wherever it may be, they probably are. And just taking that time to find out what's really going on before you start criticising their work. 90% of the time, I guarantee you, they're going through something that it's not aware of.
This is Armstrong, great New Zealander. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.